Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the host of the Realness podcast. Today's guest is Connor Moore. Connor, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Hey man, I'm stoked to be here.
For sure. So Connor, we are going to just dive right into a conversational warm-up. I've got 4 questions that I like to kind of start things off with. The first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual you like to stick to on most mornings?
Yeah, man. So my day starts off, it's pretty simple, but I'd love to play with my dog in the morning.
Okay, cool.
First thing, right? Like before I even get out of bed, the
Absolutely.
dog hops up there, and we wrestle around and mess around a little bit.
For sure.
And then it's pretty straightforward. It's not too crazy. I like to go to the coffee shop.
Cool.
I like to get my coffee, and I love to socialize in the morning and just get some smiles in, and journaling.
Sweet.
My journaling practice is huge for me. So if I'm not doing that at least 5 days a week, it kind of throws me off.
Okay.
But that's a way to kind of clear the noise and get myself set up for the day. Because in the world that I live in, like every day is different. I always think it's not super consistent structure, so it's dictated by me. So
For sure, yeah, for sure.
So the journaling piece really helps me get myself together, and then it's kind
Cool.
of a game plan for the day, and then go from there.
Sweet. Now, in regards to the journaling, what is that? Because a lot of my previous guests, there's some sort of writing practice or kind of like speaking out loud practice in regards to affirmations. So for you specifically, Connor, what does that journaling practice entail? What does it look like?
Yeah, so it's the same journaling practice I use with the people that I work with, with my clients. So for them, it's very prompt based. For me, I'm really thinking about what questions I have about myself, what I'm doing, how to do a better job. Like I'm asking myself challenging questions.
Okay.
Or just writing whatever's on my mind. Like just getting it out of my head.
For sure.
Paper. So it's not really structured. I know a lot of people love those like really structured prompted journals, but I like the ability to just let it flow.
Perfect.
And just see where it goes and to see kind of what comes up for me.
Okay.
And if I have something that's like weighing on me, like I'm working on my program for 2020, right? So there's always kind of stuff coming up with that. It's always a little bit frustrating, like figuring out the tech stuff and just getting the systems put together. Why does this bother me so bad?
Right,
you know, like,
right.
What can I do? What can I let go of? That's a big question I like to ask myself. Like, what can I let go of? What's getting in my way that I'm holding on to? So I'm really, it's become a practice of more questioning myself and getting clarity on where I'm at and what I'm doing. But that's been a development over several years of that practice. It used to just be write whatever's on my mind, just write. But now I've gotten more. It's like I think asking ourselves really powerful questions and things that are really hard to answer is really huge. And if you can develop the practice of doing that, it's so fun. So that's what my journaling practice is like in the morning.
Beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that a little bit deeper there. So the next question that I have for you, do you have, and for the next 3, if there's more than one, feel free to share, because I know it's kind of hard sometimes to limit it to one, but is there a favorite book or book that you like to gift often?
Oh man, it's variable, right? So when it comes to people with relationships, I think the book Attached is really, really great. And I'm going to give you a handful just because there's different circumstances.
Please, absolutely.
The book Attached is such a good breakdown of why we create the relationships that we do in our lives. And it's really very relatable. I love books that make things relatable, understandable, and not try and like highbrow you, right? There's a place for like books that are really difficult, but ones that can resonate with a large group of people.
Absolutely.
I love that. The book Rethinking Narcissism is actually one I love to give because I do work with a lot of people and have a lot of friends that have been through these kind of challenging relationships and struggle with codependence in their relationships. And that because I work with mostly women, like that's something that comes up a lot, is like the struggles that come up in long-term relationships or in trying to find partnership. So Rethinking Narcissism, and I found that book at a time that was really important for me to process some of that after a relationship and some friendships that were just really got sideways. It helped me understand myself quite a bit more. And then really the one that there's so many to think about.
Dude, it's tough. It's tough.
But the book that changed the game for me and got me into really reading was Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Yep.
And I don't know if maybe I've outgrown that. It's just I had this like nostalgia for that book because it was 10 years ago, and that book kind of was my intro into my own style of personal growth. It was like, oh, let me think about this a little bit deeper. Like, why do we do the things we do? And I was coaching CrossFit at the time, so I started applying that to the people that I was working with. Like, why are they here, and how can I add more value to their experience outside of the gym? Like, it was little things like that. So that created a huge shift for me.
Cool, awesome. So three awesome, powerful books: Attached, Rethinking Narcissism, and Start with Why. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's it.
Awesome. Very good. Okay, now I want to kind of preface this next question with the question, first of all, is do you have a favorite quote, mantra, or word? Now, for me personally, I love words. I call myself like a wordy because I just, there's something about words. I mean, it's just, something just clicks inside of me. But anyways, I know that for different seasons of my life, there's different words, there's different quotes, there's different mantras and things of that nature. So this quote, mantra, or word can be maybe something that is resonating with you right now in this current season, or maybe it's something that resonated with you in a past season. So however you want to take that, it's open to kind of your interpretation. But favorite quote, mantra, or word?
Yeah, well, I'm going to get down to I've got one.
Okay, perfect.
There's a bunch floating around, but the one that changed the most for me, and I held on to this one for a couple of years, was how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes.
And I don't know who said that or where that came from. Like, people have taken credit for that quote over and over again. I've seen a lot of different names underneath it, but who knows? But it's something that I probably said it to myself internally in my own internal dialogue, probably 20,000 times over the course of 3 years.
For sure.
Because those little things, and I was in a place where I really had to, especially doing, creating a career for myself in my own world. You have to treat it like a job, and it's not this fun game that everybody thinks it is a lot of the time. Like, it takes real work and commitment, and you have to understand and acknowledge the stuff that's just kind of getting in your way.
For sure.
And those are patterns. And for me, it was like, all right, well, how can I start to address those and bring a higher quality of work to everything that I do, and more of me to everything that I do. So that phrase was a huge part of my life. And it was like a 3-year mantra. Like, now they kind of come and go a little faster.
For sure. Dude, I seriously, that's one of the, I heard that quote probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, like on a podcast, and it was, I think the person that said it credited it to some strength and conditioning coach or whatever. Yeah. But when I heard that, I've literally said that quote already in my head today. Because I mean, it's just seriously how, and people sometimes ask me well, why do you do that, Quentin, or why do you care so much about kind of the details of that? Because, and I'll tell them how you do anything is how you do everything. Yeah. It's like you said, I love that what you said, it's about the little things. It's because if you do the little things right, then that's going to carry over to the big things. It's all about that preparation. I firmly believe that today is preparation for tomorrow. Yeah. If I learn what I need to learn today, if I'm continuing to lay that foundation today, if I'm just practicing that discipline today, then that's for sure going to carry over to tomorrow, and then you just continue that, and that's where that momentum and that's where that power in our lives comes from. So I appreciate that quote.
Oh man, one of my clients, just a quick story. One of my clients,
no, let's go.
He was working with that. That was one of something he was starting to work on himself, right? So he was writing that in his journal every day. He was doing different things, and he's going through some pretty hard stuff. But he had finished brushing his teeth and was walking out of the bathroom, and realized he didn't put the cap back on the toothpaste. Yeah. And he was normally he would say oh, whatever,
Right.
He goes, then I remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I walked back in the bathroom and I put the cap back on the toothpaste.
Dude,
and it changed my day. It changed the tone of the day. I was like, that's right.
It's powerful, man.
Like
it is. And a lot of people will laugh at that or think that's over the top, but it's just, and you can probably take it maybe a little too far or whatever, but it's just the practice of doing what you're supposed to do, and as you practice that, that just builds that character and that self accountability, and again, that's powerful stuff. That stuff carries over to all aspects of life. So right on, man, with that quote for sure. So the last question that I have, and obviously I introduced you as the host of the Realness podcast. So before you answer this question, if you would like to just kind of talk about your podcast and maybe share a little bit about what that podcast is all about, please feel free.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, if you do have a favorite or most listened to podcast, what would that be?
Man, my podcast, it's pretty simple in the way that it's structured, right? It's free flow conversations.
Cool.
And we get into things, I believe that if you kind of create a container of like vulnerability, right? So I have I kind of wear everything on my sleeve. I put it all out there, and that creates really fun conversations.
Absolutely.
And asking really good questions, I think, is really impactful. So bringing people in that are willing to share and open to sharing something different. Like I don't love podcasts that are highly edited or like a kind of like a sales pitch for an hour. So it's getting like I don't necessarily even care about what people do as much as why they do it and how they got there. So we just break that down, and we talk about all kinds of stuff from like sexuality to psychedelics to traditional personal development to books. And I love, I have a soft spot for authors and comedians. Are kind of my favorite people to get a hold of when I can. So that's always really, really fun. So yeah, that's my show in a nutshell. And that's why it's called The Realness, man. We're just like trying to have a good time. And it kind of sets the tone.
I love it.
As far as shows I love to listen to, it's hard to have a favorite because it just depends on what I'm into.
I agree. Yep.
Right now, I'm like a huge like Sam Harris guy.
Okay,
I love Sam Harris's podcast. He is now it's called Making Sense. It used to be called Waking Up.
Okay.
And he played a big part in my life when it came to like understanding religion and myself and even psychedelics. It's a very pragmatic, like the most pragmatic podcaster I think on the planet.
Love it. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, you got to think like as cliche as this is, like Joe Rogan has these incredible guests and these 3-hour conversations. If you love long form content, he's a goofball and like sometimes he's not the best interviewer in the world.
Right.
But it's awesome.
It's
really fun. Him and then an Armchair Expert by Dak Shepard is
cool.
Really, those are fun too. And I think a lot of that is like they're just like having a good time with it.
Of course.
And also the guests they have on those shows, they have access to some amazing people.
Absolutely.
So it's really cool to hear those stories.
Sweet, love it. Now I just want to ask you, because obviously I'm super passionate about podcasting, and it's always cool when I have another person on that has their own podcast, and it's always kind of interesting to hear why somebody started their own podcast, and so why did you start a podcast, and just kind of like what is that thing kind of inside of you that clicks in regards to podcasting and having those next level conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it was something I was doing anyways.
Okay,
like I had a cool network, and I was into having these really fun conversations as a part of my normal life.
Cool.
And I coached, group fitness in some form or fashion, strength and conditioning for 7 years. So I had a lot of experience speaking with people and relating to people, which is why I love coaching now.
Absolutely.
It's not that much different. It's just there's less fitness involved.
For
in
sure.
what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So between those two things, and I kind of loved performing in some way. Like it was something about like being in front of people, saying what you want to say, like putting your thoughts out there, getting feedback from people, challenging ideas,
for sure,
and seeing from a diverse group of people like what that meant to them or how that resonated. Like human behavior fascinates me. Like why we do the things we do just trips me out.
For sure.
It's so fun. And then I just happened to be in a place where I worked with a high-level podcaster and was working on a lot of the back-end stuff, so I got a lot of the information.
Cool.
And of course, I wanted to do it for like 3 years before I did it.
Yeah, for sure.
But I got a pretty sweet setup, and I had a really cool network and was able to kind of put the wheels in motion.
Awesome.
And then, of course, had some major hiccups along the way, but it's been really cool. And then it just became like, how often do you get to have these kind of conversations? Right. Once you get into it, it's really hard. That's why everybody has a podcast now. It's really hard to like let it go because you don't get stuff like this very often.
Right. You're right.
And if you can create content in a this is a massive sea of podcasts, right, and content out there. If you can create something that stands out, like that's really, really exciting.
For sure.
It's a fun game to play.
It is, man. I love playing the game, and one of the things that's really just fires me up is like you and I probably never would have connected if it wasn't for the podcast. And I mean 99.9% of the people that I bring on, it's I reach out to them through, just like I did with you, a random DM on Instagram, and I wouldn't have connected with probably the majority of these people if it wasn't for the podcast. So it's like, hey, like I've got something of value to provide to you as a guest. You get to share your story and all that. You get to kind of have that link forever and share it however you want to share it, cut it up, stuff like that. But it's so cool because it's like I'm getting to meet in person people that I otherwise wouldn't because of a podcast, because of a laptop and a blue microphone. You know what I mean? It's just like, dude, it can, and people are like, oh, they got, like they want to start a podcast, like, oh, I have to have like I have to put in like, a couple grand to get a studio and this and that. It's like, no, dude, like my podcast has been a top 50 on iTunes and I have a laptop and a blue microphone, like, that it's it. It doesn't have to be something complicated and crazy. It can be very simple and you have a conversation. It's so powerful, right?
Yeah,
so
finding a style that suits you. It's like,
for sure,
maybe you do want the highly produced thing, and that's like you're doing more like journalism.
Right,
that's great. But like, is that a genuine form of self-expression for you?
Right.
And that's what's going to create the best content.
Yeah, cool, man. Okay, so Connor, let's. I want to kind of take this conversation kind of backwards in the sense I would love to get your backstory. So if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, kind of like, where did you grow up? What did those younger years look like? Were you involved? I'm assuming you probably were, like in athletics, some extracurricular activities. Kind of what were those earlier year dynamics like for you?
Yeah, man. So I grew up in Graham, Texas.
Okay.
Which if you've ever seen like Varsity Blues, like it's kind of that style of town.
Okay, cool, cool.
So very much a football town. There wasn't that many options as far as sports go. But I grew up with my grandparents. I moved in with my grandparents when I was 5, me and my 2 younger brothers. And my parents, struggled with addiction, which was really was an interesting way to grow up, challenging in some ways.
Right.
Not bad people and not like seedy, weird, like Breaking Bad type stuff. But, it was just a challenging experience for sure, to say the least. So I think I coped with that by eating a lot, and I was kind of a fat kid. I mean, I was a fat kid. And that was a weird experience too, especially being who I am now, and most people don't know or see that. But,
right.
Very socially awkward, socially anxious. Did find an outlet in football because I was so big. I was like 6 foot in junior high, like 200 pounds.
Big boy.
I wasn't athletic necessarily. It is hard to be when you're that big at that age. It's hard to manipulate your body in that way, right? Like it's just hard to move.
Right.
I would like bump into door frames. I could trip over my feet. Like I was a big kid. Size 14 shoes.
Wow.
I was in 6th grade, or 7th grade.
That's pretty big.
I was just a big kid.
Yeah.
But I could stand in people's way, and I was usually found a way onto like the A team, and even with my lack of athleticism. In high school, that changed. I kind of grew into my body a little bit more. Lost some weight. Did some different things, but it was very much like football focused. Looking back now, I don't even think I liked football that much.
Right.
I liked being with my friends. I liked playing. I always joked around. I was always messing around. Like that's kind of my personality now. Like I take things serious when they need to be taken seriously, and never outside of that. I'd probably push it a little bit too far. But like even back in the day, it was like. National anthem was messing around, warm-ups messing around, but when the kickoff happened, like I was there to like play.
For sure,
it was a very different mentality than a lot of guys had. I think I've carried that into my life now, where it's like I don't take things seriously unless they need to be taken seriously, and that's I think offers a lot of freedom in life. I grew up with my grandparents, a couple younger brothers. We never weren't that close. We're all so different. Somehow my mom had the jock in me. The band nerd and my youngest brother, and then like the drama kid and my middle brother.
There you go. There you go.
We were just like covered. We were all we're whatever, like all district, all whatever. Like just the most different outlet you could possibly find. It was a very weird thing. And my brother was kind of a stoner, so we always had this like kind of bashing heads. I thought weed was like the worst thing in the world. So it was like one of these really weird deals. But then I went to when I went to college. Everything really changed. It was me getting out of my hometown, kind of, right? I kind of just like got a little bit away. I was an hour and a half away. Played some football in college. Got injured working oil and gas. I worked oil and gas construction most of my like younger days. I mean, I was out in the oil field since I was like 6 years old. So, and I would just go out and like just hang out and help and shoot my BB gun. Until I was like running construction crews and stuff like that. So I blew out my S1 disc, and that was something. I pushed it too far. I couldn't really walk at the end of that. It was really, really challenging, and I couldn't play football anymore. My left leg didn't really work properly. I couldn't get in a 3-point stance. I couldn't squat for like a year, and that was from like the best shape of my life at like 19 years old. Of course, when you're just resilient. And that was my first kind of existential crisis. Like, I don't know who I am anymore. My identity was gone. Because I'd been playing football since I was in the 4th grade, full contact. Like, it's all I was.
Yep.
And then again, like I said, I didn't really love it, but it was just nature of the beast, right? A big dude in a small football town. Like, there's not a lot of options.
Right.
So I quit playing football in college. I couldn't, like I said, that was it. And then I went to Texas State, so I transferred schools.
Okay.
And it was the first time I'd been around people that didn't know me. Like, it's funny when you're from a small town. You get this from a small town. Like, everybody there knows you.
Absolutely.
Like there's a song. It's you're always 17 in your hometown, right? And so
I like that.
It's one of those things where it was a moment when I realized, and I was at this frat party, right? It's like not a really normal time to have like philosophical thoughts. But as a 21-year-old, maybe 20-year-old at a frat party, first frat party I've ever been to, was like, these people don't know me, don't know what I'm about. They don't know anything about me besides what I tell them. And it was this weird sense of like freedom from who I'd been before. And I thought that was so amazing. And I felt like I had all this, for the first time in my life, I had like space to explore different ideas, different thoughts. Like, that was the first time I didn't smoke weed till I was 20, right? Like, I was just trying new things, like challenging ideas. And realized, like, I had bought into a lot of things that I didn't necessarily believe and didn't really align with me. That's a young age to start figuring that stuff out.
It is.
I mean, I'm 20 years old. Of course, I'm in a frat now, so I'm like doing the frat thing. And it's like, this is all, I'm looking at like, there's groups of people that don't like each other on campus and being like, but you understand you are exactly the same. Which is like, now I look at politics, which is basically like a Democratic fraternity and a Republican fraternity.
For sure.
It's like, it's the same thing. So I started seeing the world in this kind of like this meta way. Which was really fun. And just that's when I started really getting fascinated by human behavior, was this like kind of, for having that huge, like, I don't have an identity anymore because my identity is wrapped up in this sport, now to being in this different world with a bunch of different people and being able to essentially, if you turn a fraternity into like a social experiment, that's kind of how I viewed it. Honestly, looking back, I was looking at this like this group of people and the amount of compliance and dressing the same and acting the same, but within any group, and it was very weird how these groups connected, and it kind of fascinated me. And then I got into CrossFit, which is a very similar experience. And then I'm coaching, several hundred people
for sure,
and I'm getting to interact with them and learn more about them. And that's when I got into personal development. So I got into personal development when I was about 22.
Wow.
So I went to my first Tony Robbins event. I got sent to it by my boss when I was like 22 or 23. And I was too young for it. And I love Tony Robbins, but like those seminars are geared for people who have worked in a cubicle for 20 years and like feel very. And I'm like, I love my job. I'm making good money. I'm in my early 20s. Like I'm coaching all the time.
For sure.
So that was the next 7 years was just focused around strength and conditioning.
Now before I want to just kind of jump in there for a minute because there's a lot there that I kind of want to again take a step back and unpack a little bit. The first thing being the addiction that your parents struggled with, because and then growing up with your grandparents, like psychologically, when you're at that age, you're just you're kind of taking life one day at a time. But as you get older and think about certain things, how and as you now as a grown man, as an adult, and doing that inner work that I know that you've done, as you look back on those younger years, growing up with your grandparents, having the addiction with your parents and things like that in your life on some level, what did that do to you? What did that cause inside of you that you, again, looking back, realize like, hey, like maybe I believe that way, or I live that way, or experience something in that manner because of that addiction, because of not really maybe having my mom and my dad present in my life all the time?
Yeah, so that's a really good question.
Thank you.
And I've thought about this a ton. So my grandparents were really stable and very loving. They were very like we got everything we wanted because we're like that's what grandparents are supposed to do. Of course, you're not supposed to live with them, but they were young, and so we all moved in with them. Like I said, when I was about 5.
Okay.
And one thing that was weird is my dad. And I, in a weird way, respect him for this. Like, just wasn't that big of a part of my life.
Okay.
I don't think he really thought he could be, and he's actually in prison now.
Okay.
And we're closer now. I mean, we text from his prison email account.
Cool.
Which is cool. But my mom, had a lot of shame, and it was really hard for her. And we've broken this down and healed our relationship a ton. But when you're that age and your parent, like your mom, would come back into your life and tell you everything's going to be okay, and then bail,
right?
Inevitably, because that's what addicts do, and it doesn't make any sense at all. It is a 5, 6, 7, 10-year-old, like it just doesn't make sense. It's like that's the end of the day. You're like, I don't understand why this is happening. So I started trying to understand why at a very early age too. Like why am I not enough? Why is this happening? Why are drugs more important than me? Like that's the kind of questions that you're asking yourself at a young age, which I think one, it makes you a little bit, can make you immature growing up because you kind of stunt yourself, but also it makes you grow up in some ways a little faster than most. And was just always curious about why, and I think that really started that pattern. And my dad, I kind of, with him, I see him on every other summer and like holidays, like pretty standard custody, like minor stuff. But was a cool guy, It was like he's like the cool dude, like smoked cigarettes and wore denim jackets, like he was like that kind of guy. And I admired him because there was something about him that was like free, I guess. Well, not now necessarily.
Right. But kind of like his spirit, though, right?
It was, and we're much more similar than I had let myself believe. Because I've been told he was bad for so long.
Right.
Which wasn't congruent with how I felt internally. And he's not a bad guy. He's made really terrible decisions.
Of course.
But it was confusing at the end of the day. So I had this really interesting contrast between like super loving grandparents who acted as my parents, and then really confusing and frustrating and disappointing parents that would come in and out in different ways. So it gave me this weird kind of like the value of a loving parental figure is so important, and I got that while also being kind of devastated by the opposite of that in one life experience. Because it gave me a lot of context early on and a lot of experience to look back on and see how valuable those things are, how valuable healthy relationships are.
Of course.
And especially like with the custody battles and all those things, like how important it is to communicate with your children in a way that is almost more honest than what most people are comfortable with, and how big of an impact that has. So it really put me in an interesting position. Again, being socially awkward kind of lends itself to being pretty introspective because you're really thinking about why you're so socially awkward all the time. Which, being as extroverted as I am, people wouldn't believe that I was like, terrified for a long time. But always had that drive to like want to kind of get attention and be playful and loud. But was not very good at it.
Now, also something else I would like to discuss with you, Connor, is just like you said. You're a bigger kid. You kind of maybe used eating as maybe like an outlet or help you to feel better, feel good, all that type of stuff. Now, being a bigger kid and being, like you just said, kind of like socially awkward and stuff like that, when you're, that upper elementary going into junior high, like junior high for all of us is just a very interesting time of life, an interesting season of life. But sometimes, when you're overweight and, just you can't really communicate as well as some of the other kids, things like that. And I don't like to use the word bullying because I think you and I are both in our 30s, and when I look back when I was younger, was I quote unquote bullied? Yeah, but then I also bullied. But I just think some of that stuff is just natural. I think it's necessary. I think it's good. So I'm not going to use the word bullying because I don't even like that word. I think it's our society is just taking it and run with it. But anyways, you get picked on, you kind of get made fun of. Was some of that a part of your life? And then in addition to what you were kind of trying to figure out with your parents and that balance with your grandparents and all that, was some of the stuff that maybe some of the other kids said to you and some of that social stuff, like within the context of school, was that something else that you kind of had to work through and struggled with as well?
Yeah, I mean the bullying thing, I agree with you. It's kind of been run away with.
Right.
I think it was it's teasing and it's picking on it. We all did it to each other.
Of course.
I actually feel worse because I was like really hard on some kids.
Okay.
I bullied some kids, which was like trickle down, right?
Right.
And I actually got a chance to like apologize to them later
cool.
on, which was nice. But
absolutely.
We don't know. That's one thing too. I like to give, if you're a child, like you get some bandwidth, and like you're figuring out what's appropriate. And I definitely did something that I was always saying things that were inappropriate. I was like, it was a cry for attention. I was lucky because my grandparents, my granddad has a 7th grade education, but had done really well for himself in oil and gas.
Okay,
really cool,
great.
like started from the bottom, now we're here story.
Awesome.
So we had fun things for like I had friends because we had like a couple 4-wheelers and a pool, and we'd have like pool parties and stuff, and we were kids. That was high social value. So I had a handful of friends.
Okay.
But I remember like the close friends I had. One in particular was just such a rude person to me. Like it just really mean shit, you know, really really interesting, and there were some things I remember it was just hard to fit in. Like I remember because I wasn't like I was just overweight. I was also like 6 inches taller than everyone.
Right. Yeah.
And it's funny, my girlfriend now, Kelly, she's 6'1".
Oh wow.
And she was like 6 foot in junior high as well as a girl. So it's like the same thing. It's like all you want is to just be like everybody else.
Of course.
Which is you get over that as an adult, but I would never redo junior high.
Right.
You couldn't pay me to redo that
For
situation because it was just a constant like, where do I fit? And it wasn't like people were over the top. Like I definitely got called a fat ass and stuff. And like, that's, I guess you can call it bullying and like whatever, and kind of get made fun of, but it wasn't over the top.
For sure.
Like at the end of the day, I needed to learn how to stand up for myself, which I wasn't great at.
Yeah.
But it was more just like not knowing where I belonged. That was very, very interesting for me.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Feeling on the margins is kind of what that felt like.
Right. And I think just as you're kind of unpacking your story, I think some of this, you gain this ability to kind of like look inward, and you were thinking a lot just because of some of the situations life kind of handed you at a young age. And so it's interesting as you started talking about getting into like personal development stuff at a very young age, and then when you got injured and you were done with football and kind of had this identity crisis. It's interesting how maybe some of those processes that you were able to think through and some of those skills you were able to gain when you're younger because of, again, some of those situations life handed you at a young age, like that really tied into kind of like that self-discovery that happened around 20 years old, and then it's really developed into who you are today. It's kind of interesting how life presents us with different experiences, and all of us develop in different ways and different tools in regards to how to handle those experiences. But it's interesting how some of those things at a very young age kind of get developed, and then they become a huge part of who we are, whether we determine like, hey, this is the direction I'm going to take my life, and or these are the tools that I'm going to use. Like it's just kind of interesting how like all of that kind of comes to fruition in our lives, and a lot of it stems back from that childhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's the quest. This is even what I do in coaching, and I think is really important, is creating an integrated whole, right? Like instead of like saying that was just that experience, that was an old version of me. Like there's no such thing as old version. There's no old you. It's like all you. You're one big thing. So if you can integrate that experience into your life now, and like my thing was, I just felt broken, right? Like I just felt like I was wrong, broken. There was a lot of Christian shame piled up on top of that, and that whole thing from just growing up in the Bible Belt and applying that to my life. So it's like all these little things. So I had to, my work was really just trying to get to a place where I felt like I wasn't broken. And that didn't happen until I got into looking at and started looking at the ways that I behaved and how that was impacting others, and what that said about who I was, and taking really, really aggressive responsibility for things that I had kind of passed on to other people as being their fault, right? Like,
right.
My mom was doing the best she could. Is it my fault that she was like that? No. Is it my responsibility to do something about it now and maybe leverage that for some kind of growth? And then maybe if I can do that well, end up with a more compassionate outlook on life? Well, yeah, that's the product of responsibility. And I think taking responsibility for all of these things, whether they're your fault or not, leads to compassion in the end of the story.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I wanna go like full into kind of like the personal development. I kind of like stopped you when you started talking about like the CrossFit and all that, because I didn't want to get too far ahead, because I want to touch on some of those childhood experiences. But so you've already mentioned like kind of around the age 20, you're like a part of this frat. You start kind of like analyzing things and thinking through things in regards to like your own life. And then you mentioned kind of like the Tony Robbins thing. So just share with us, Connor, like kind of like this whole kind of awakening in regards to personal development. What did it do for you? Where did this turning point in regards to you realizing that you're not broken? When did that come to be? So let's just kind of like walk through the personal development that you experience, and then we'll kind of just move on from there.
Yeah, I mean, so I got into personal development, and I would consider like very focused personal development through CrossFit. And
Okay,
that was great.
Okay.
So that was like I said, 7 years of commitment. I really wanted to own a gym. I ended up owning a gym, making that all happen, and I had done it. This thing about not feeling broken, like CrossFit and strength and conditioning took up most of my space, mental, emotional time, and not until my gym failed. Did I really get? That was about 27. So 27, 28.
Okay.
Everything just kind of like collapsed, and there was some real estate fraud on the end of the person who like owned the building, and it was just this complete disaster. Which I should have, again, taking responsibility. Like I should have asked better questions. I should have not gotten myself in the lease that I got myself into. Like it was a really cumbersome process, but not until that space was freed up where coaching, strength and conditioning used to be, was I able to actually dive into all of it. And that was when things like, because of course nothing makes you feel more broken than like confirming your failures. Right. So I've been like, okay, I failed. Like I could blame it on everybody else, but it's my responsibility. I lost money. That was really hard. This has been, I let people down, I felt like, and I had to process all of that stuff. But I had the time and the space because I had no longer had my job, my gym, my career, and I committed, like, I'm not, because people wanted me to go, I was a really good coach, so people wanted me to go coach their gym, whatever. You can make $25 an hour coaching, I was like, I don't really want to do that anymore. I was just so tainted by the whole thing. And that's when things really got, like, I would say more serious. And all the work that I had done, all the books that I had read, and the personal development work I had done through my 20s, like, really came to fruition after that all happened. Because I didn't have a choice, right? It was like I had nothing much left here. And it was good. That was really, really helpful. And to see how that integrated it kind of brought it all together and all started to make sense. And that was, I don't even know what your question was anymore. But yeah,
you're good.
How that manifested, it was really nice. And I had to reflect. And be like, and just really get into why I had created that for myself. And viewing it through, like, I created this for myself for some reason. And then after that, and I knew once the gym closed, like, this is more about people than it is about fitness at this point. Like, I had been putting them together for so long, but eventually, like, the inner work became much more valuable to me, and I was fighting that off. I was really like, no, that's not really, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't really, I don't know, I'm not going to be a therapist. Like, this is, it's just like playing all the games of why I shouldn't do what really felt right. But then circumstances provide themselves where it's like, well, you have a choice now to make, right? You can keep doing the same stuff, or you can go do something different, and that's when things really, really changed.
Now, so you had this kind of like when you were, got injured with football. You mentioned you kind of like had this identity crisis, right? Because it's like, and I did the same thing. I played a year of college football, then I quit football, transferred schools, and I had this identity crisis. It was some of the darkest days of my life because I didn't have, these goals to work towards. I didn't have the camaraderie with the locker room, all that. But did you then, first of all, how did you get exposed to CrossFit and get involved in CrossFit? And then second of all, did you kind of like take, that identity that you found in football and kind of then replace it with CrossFit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was the thing whenever I got into CrossFit because I was injured.
Okay.
So I got injured, and I learned about CrossFit in like 2006.
Okay.
Before people really knew what it was. I think they founded it in 2004. So it was like really, really new. But people were moving like trash. Like I was like, this is dumb.
Of course.
It was mostly soccer players who were like running a bunch and doing a bunch of burpees. And I'm like, this doesn't really appeal to me. I'm 240 pounds. I'm I'm an offensive tackle / tight end. It was like not really making sense.
Yeah.
But then when I got injured, they told me I'd never deadlift again. And I was like, well, I don't really accept that. So I read Mark Ripetoe's book, Starting Strength and Practical Programming. And I started deadlifting and just building up my thoracic. I was like, if I can just build my thoracic spine, or my lumbar spine, a lot of musculature there, I can have enough stability to where I can be healthy. That's the best way to be healthy. It's not avoiding lifting weights. It's doing it properly.
Absolutely.
So that got me into more and more education around strength and conditioning. That's why I got into I started like coaching was just my friends at the gym because I was fascinated by this stuff, and I was reading T-Nation articles and just like whatever it was in the early internet days back then, and just trying to figure it out. And then I got exposed to it. I loved it and I was into it, but I wanted a gym, so I did my internship with a company that sold sandbags.
Okay.
Like really cool sandbags, and so my internship goal was just to sell the CrossFit gyms essentially, like go teach people how to use these things, run seminars, and then with the hopes of as a business like them picking up our product.
Right.
But that was really just a way for me to get into every CrossFit gym in the city.
For sure.
In Austin.
Yeah.
So before my internship was up, I was already at this other gym coaching for free. They brought me on part time. And then from there, just kind of like I was obsessed.
So I want to focus on the identity thing because so then you kind of like get into the CrossFit and then you want to own your own gym and all this. But did you where was your mindset at? Kind of like in regards to when you took that dive into CrossFit, were you just really at that season and time of your life just really focused on CrossFit and opening up your own gym and not really thinking about anything in regards to kind of like, developing your inner self or kind of just where were your thoughts? Where was your mindset during that time of life?
So I was very resentful of the fact that I didn't get to quit on my own terms.
In regards to football? Okay.
Yeah, so it was very much, and that's why I even said that with that's what got me into CrossFit. So it was a very easy transition to now my goal a couple of years later after graduating college, so about 3 years after I got injured is when I got into it. But it was like I just needed something because in college you have like flag football and stuff. Like you have that competitive itch, and I had so much of that like left over because I didn't quit on my own terms.
Right.
So I definitely easily translated that, and I don't think really like internal development was a part of my thought process at the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't until Start With Why when I started really thinking like, well, why do I even do this? And that's why I love that book because it had me thinking like, why am I so drawn to compete? Is that even healthy for me? Right? And so the goal wasn't opening a gym. At that point, it was just like, I just want to compete.
Okay.
And then I got really excited about coaching other people. So it was like, I'm not answering the question that well just because it was all accidental.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
It only makes sense looking backwards. Like at the time, it was like, oh, I really enjoy. Now there's this group of 20 people who are listening to what I have to say, so my responsibility is to give them the best information I can and deliver it in a way that they can hear it.
Right.
That started to become fun, right? Which now looking back, that's the podcast. Right. And then working with them one-on-one on what's going on because I started doing inner work, so I could start helping them do inner work. Well, that's now my business. Right. So it's weird how it all kind of came together, but at the very beginning, it was just me needing some outlet to compete because I felt like I'd gotten robbed. Right. And I didn't have the wherewithal to go like, oh, this probably serves me in some way at the time. Looking back, and now I can think about things that are challenging like that. Like the situation losing the gym was very similar to when I had lost football. Right, so I'd already kind of done that whole thing before. So I'd had like my practice run at losing everything that mattered, and then I did it again. Right. So it's like, okay, well, I have some practice this year. I know kind of what this feels like. I know how I can lose myself in it, and that's when I get it's like my all the information I'd shared and learned about inner development really came to a head. So I had to have it.
So you open up your own gym, and then you've talked about the gym closed. There was some sort of failure if you believe in failure. I don't necessarily do, but what was I'm sure that was probably a pretty dark time. It was probably rocked kind of like the foundation that you had built for yourself. So just walk us through a little bit of some of that darkness, and then we'll start again stepping into kind of who the individual you've developed yourself into today.
Yeah, so it was super dark. It was really hard. I had my first experience with ayahuasca right about the same time I closed the gym, which was very serendipitous. That actually helped a lot. It helped me zoom out and back off a little bit. And then I committed to, when I sold all my equipment, I had a little bit of liquid cash, so I said, okay, well, I'll just take 3 months to myself and just I would take my dog to the creek and we every day just like go walk and think and listen to Alan Watts and just like get into different things. And I just forced myself to. I know like I'm gonna want to jump back into work. I'm gonna need this validation of doing whatever. It's like no, I just need to accept that this didn't work and just sit in it for a little while and process it. And I gave myself the space to process, which was really helpful, really helpful. And then I thought about moving to New Zealand for a while, which was a fun experience. But ended up actually, I got a sales job just to make ends meet for a few months, and then I ended up working at a company called On It. And then On It is where that's where things kind of like really stepped up. Now, I did lose myself in that culture because it was so new to me. Like all I'd known is like CrossFit fitness people, fitness business people. Like that was my whole like network. And then I get in this thing where there's a lot of money and a lot of different things, and it's like in a lot of celebrity status type stuff. It was very, very interesting. So that's when I got into podcasts, and that's when I really started exploring psychedelics, getting around a really cool network. But yeah, that was an interesting time. But that helped me because it was so dark, and I even hated that sales job I had. It was so shitty. Right. It was like, okay, I started putting myself out there on Instagram. I started like processing my thoughts and my meditation. I started meditating, and I started processing that stuff and sharing what I was realizing on Instagram with a number of typos, not very well, but just like putting it out there. And that was my first time ever doing that. And it got noticed by the CEO of this company, who we became friends.
Aubrey Marcus?
Yeah. And then I ended up working for him as a copywriter and a content creator. So it was really, kind of this like project management, always on the podcast, always on the content. And it was very validating for me and made me realize that and feel that what I was doing actually had value. And that gave me some kind of purpose again, because it felt like what I was doing had value, and it blew up in my face, and there was this whole like reset period of basically darkness. Then crawling myself out of that and feeling like, okay, there's eyes on me now. People are directly responding to what I have to say and share. And now all those experiences, whether it be the football injuries or the losing my identity or having a business that fails, like now what that does is gives me something to share and is more relatable. And then whatever work I do now going forward, the growth that I have is something that can be communicated to more people because it resonates and is more relatable. And I started to really see the power of that, and that gave me some sense of purpose. And I could be myself. It was the first time I felt like I could be myself doing it. And because it was natural for me versus having to try to do anything. CrossFit coaching was very natural to me, and this was the only other thing that I'd found that felt that way. Was like sitting down doing a podcast or coaching someone. Yeah, it was really fun.
So your time at Onnit, I mean, that's Aubrey Marcus and Joe Rogan's connected with Onnit. I mean, there's Tim Kennedy, all kinds of different just next level human beings that are connected with Onnit. So let's talk about Aubrey for a moment. Just your interaction with him, being around him, being at Onnit. Kind of like, what did you learn from him specifically, and what did you what's the major takeaway from your season being connected with those next level human beings at the Onnit Academy?
It was, as far as learning from him, a lot of it was good feedback on the way that I presented myself.
Okay.
The way I had conversations, the way I wrote. He's an outstanding writer, so that was really helpful. Like just getting feedback on that. I also wrote a lot of stuff around. It gave me an opportunity to really like explore different writing. That was a big part of it, and just different methods of content creation and what resonated with people, because there was such a big audience there. I got so much feedback. So much feedback. Of course. Just like from his stuff, So there was. I can't really pinpoint one thing, because like personally there was some butting of heads that definitely happened, but that's just two big personalities,
of course,
and one of them works for the other one, so that usually ends one of two ways. right So I don't think either one of us are shy about that. But the work was good, and that's where the podcast all started. Was that I actually was a community manager for his Go For Your Win program. And started going live into our like 800 person Facebook group, and everybody loved it. Which gave me confidence in having a show, and gave these other people who they actually sponsored the show early on, like the confidence in me to be able to do a good job. So it set me up in a way, but it gave me so many opportunities to share with people and like start to hone the message and the feedback around that. That was the biggest thing, I think.
Feedback,
it's like just the connection with people, being able to do some talking in person with our mastermind groups, and being able to just be around people like Tim Kennedy, who's completely ridiculous, or Donald Cerrone, right? These guys who are just they're like kind of larger than life, but they're real people
for sure.
And it humanized some of these people, because I've met people who have these like big time podcasts, right? And to be straight up, they kind of suck. Like they're not that great. They're not that cool of people, right? It's like, and they're not. That's not always the case. Like I met some outstanding people, but I'm like, this guy is famous in this world, and right now in this conversation, he doesn't seem that much different from me.
Interesting.
And that was very. It wasn't like they were less than. It was like, oh no, we're just kind of all the same.
Right.
And
we are.
Yeah. So it's like this. They're not that special, even though they get X million downloads.
Right. Right.
So that gave me this other kind of like confidence too, and this just being around those kind of people, it humanizes everyone. Like, I don't even see Joe Rogan as like an iconic figure anymore. It's just like he's a dude who works his ass off
for sure
and does a really good job at a lot of different things, and it's a project commitment and like good circumstances and good timing, of course, and some luck in there too. But it's the people, right, and that's accessible to all of us in some way or another. Maybe not the same scale, but something's there, and that was really nice to see too.
That is so powerful right there, what you just said, Connor, because that's kind of like an experience that I've gone through with the podcast, because I'm going to be straight up honest with you right now, because like I was, I kind of reached out to you because I think I saw somebody tag you in an Instagram story. I was like, okay, this guy looks like he's in Denver. I'm going to reach out to him. And I honestly didn't even like do a whole lot of research until I was prepping for our actual conversation. And I start digging in. I'm like, I type in your name into, like my cast box where I listen to podcasts, and you're on all these podcasts. And I'm like, wait a minute, he's connected with, I'm like, wow, I was like, this guy is pretty well connected. And seriously, like initially there was a little bit of, I'd say maybe like anxiety or just some internal stuff going on inside of me. Cause I'm like, dude, like this guy's like actually like, he's connected. He's got his own podcast. Like, and it's like, but what I've learned through my experience with the podcast is like, you know what? Connor's just another dude like me.
Yeah.
This person that I had on my podcast, they have 75,000 followers on Instagram. Guess what? They're a human being just like me. So what you just said, so I want you just to explain that a little bit more, because I think that's a huge takeaway from our conversation up to this point, is that all of us human beings, we're uniquely different, but we're also uniquely similar. And it doesn't matter if you're the president or if you're the person that's laying asphalt, in the city of Denver. Like, we're all human beings. So just kind of like explain a little bit about how that maybe gave you some confidence or some clarity in your life when you were around these quote unquote celebrities and these, multimillionaires and all this stuff. How did that just kind of like shift your life and shift your heart and your mindset in regards to like, hey, like, you know what? They're just like me. What did that do for you? You kind of touched on a little bit, but it's so powerful because I've had to step into that in my own life where it's like, dude, like, this person is a human being just like me. They might be, their net worth might be, $1 million, and mine's like $1,000, probably not even that. But like we're still the same, though. You know what I mean? So just share a little bit more about that.
And one thing I noticed is like there's two different kinds of people who are, let's just put them in like the celebrity category, right? Are very notable people. There's people who appreciate being treated like a normal person, and there's people who want to be treated like a celebrity.
Okay.
Right? And generally people who want to be treated like a celebrity, I don't necessarily talk to.
Right.
It's like I don't resonate with those people. Right. And I'll use Donald Cerrone as an example because I was just talking about him yesterday because he's got the fight with Conor McGregor coming up.
Yep.
Donald Cerrone, Cowboy Cerrone,
Yep.
reminds me of every dude that I went to high school with. Like he's a cowboy dude from a small town.
Right.
He will kick you in the face and knock you unconscious at a high level.
Right.
But the dude likes to drink Budweiser and shoot guns and ride four-wheelers and risk his life for a thrill. And it didn't matter. It was something about that experience in particular where it's like this guy was, and he liked me. He just thought we got along. It was like it didn't matter. He didn't treat me as if I was like somebody who should respect him because he fights people. Right. It's like that's your job, right? Your job as a UFC fighter or a CEO to me is no more valuable than like a good author or a really good mom.
Powerful.
Right? It started saying like and that's one thing that was CrossFit coaching helped a ton is I'd see these people with 3 kids who show up to the gym every day at 5 a.m. And to say that person is less dedicated, less valuable, less impactful on the world than like a Tim Ferriss type. I mean, I guess you could like quantify that in some way, but to me they don't seem that much different, right? It's a dedication. It's you resonate on something much different than like your audience size. It's like you resonate on the way that you show up, and that I find that people that you really want to connect with will notice that, and you'll be able to find that connection with people. And it's not, but if you get this, if you start to draw a divide between I'm a normal person and they're an icon.
Right.
It creates like a false perception of what this actually is. Because, like these people have insecurities. And
Absolutely.
they're kind of weird. And they're probably, if they're really famous, if they're like a Tim Ferriss type cat, they're probably highly neurotic and not necessarily all that happy a lot of the time. Right. Not to rip Tim Ferriss. I don't know him personally well, but you see that the product of what creates that kind of success sometimes is something that's really a struggle for them. And your pain becomes your passion in that way. So being around that really did give me like this totally different perspective, and it made me feel like a sense of belonging, which was really cool.
Absolutely.
I kind of translate that to like I feel like everybody kind of in whatever world that is for you, whatever your community is, like a sense of belonging is so cool.
Cool. No, I appreciate you touching on that a little bit more because that's profound right there, and I hope the listeners just kind of like understand that because it's like you hear about this like imposter syndrome, and again I know what that is or whatever. I don't really like the terminology, but like all of us at some point I think in our lives kind of like we just like there's like am I enough kind of like thing, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, this person is like, man, again, like at the end of the day, like we're all human beings.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure it out. Nobody has it figured out, and like you just said, like I hear it all the time where these people that are multimillionaires and billionaires, like sometimes from what I hear, like they're the most unhappy. So it's not like our possessions and the money and the fame, like that's not the pinnacle. That's not everything. So thank you for touching on that experience. On it and kind of like some of the things you learn.
Yeah.
Now I want to so let's because at some point you were out in California. So let's talk about kind of like the On It season ended. Did you then move out to California, or did something happen before then? Let's just kind of keep moving along your evolution story.
That was really fun. So I spent about a year after On It. I spent about a year in Austin.
Okay.
But I was still very tied into that community.
Right.
And I wanted to not be tied to that community anymore.
Okay.
To be completely honest with you, like, it was cool, but the time like the expiration date had passed.
Yep.
And I wanted to go do something else. So I had a little bit of money, not much. I think I had like $3,000.
Right.
And a newfound faith in myself to just figure it out. I was like, well, if I get a couple of clients along the way, I'll be able to be fine. So I ended up going to Toronto for a month. I just packed up all my stuff, took it to my parents' house, which is like 4 hours from Austin, put it in their storage. And then, I just hit the road. I went to Toronto for a month, was there for a little while, was in Seattle for a month, and then a room opened up in a house in Encinitas, so North County, San Diego, which was really nice. That was affordable for me. It was 4 people lived in this house. They were all friends of mine. Moved in there, and then I was there for 7 months. I met my girlfriend Kelly while I was living there.
Cool.
Moved in with her like 2 months in. Like it was like super fast. And then I lived in LA for about 3 months, and we decided to move to Denver. But the biggest part of that was me knowing I needed to leave Austin, having all the signs like thrown in my face, and then being like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know why I'm going to Toronto, but the Toronto opportunity is there, and that's enough that's enough stability for me to like go restructure my business, restructure the podcast, really up level everything with a little bit of space, stay somewhere rent free, just like really like. I had to test the faith in myself, and I had to just pull the trigger, and I had to rip the Band-Aid off, and that created again. The theme here is knowing when it's time to create space and let shit go.
Right.
So if you can cut those ties and create the space, well, from there, you can fill that space with something else. But a lot of times we're just trying to stuff more stuff into our lives.
Of course,
And you can fill it with something. It's like no, you gotta figure out which one to let go of. And I had to let go of that community, and I had to let go of Austin. Which was where I lived for 10 years. So it was really challenging for me to not know anyone. But I had a handful of friends that I'd met over the past couple of years in different parts of the world, and I kind of went and visited all of them
for sure.
a few months.
That's awesome.
Ended up there, and it seemed like that whole thing like led me to Kelly, which was really, really cool. And then we've had this really fun relationship, and it's moved really fast. Together for less than a year, but we have a house here in Denver now, and the dog and all the things, and it's it's really great. Right.
Now, before we talk about Kelly and your current relationship, how throughout your 20s, what did those what did those relationships, and let's just kind of focus on like the intimate relationships, what did those relationships look like, and kind of like, you know, when you were younger, let's say, you know, kind of, we'll start at the age 20, and again, just kind of like touch on the 20s, but how did those intimate relationships change over the years? How did they evolve? Kind of where were you at kind of in the beginning in your early 20s? Did you, I'm assuming through, you know, the coaching and some of this confidence that you gained throughout your 20s probably helped you with those intimate relationships. Just share a little bit about how those relationships developed and evolved over the years, and then we'll kind of stop there, and then we'll get into the relationship with Kelly if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say I had a typical like dude relationship with relationships my 20s, which I had some girlfriends, right? The one I finished off my 20s with was probably the least healthy, which is like a year and a half of just like, I would say like a lot of narcissism / codependency stuff that was going on both sides of that situation.
Right.
But if I would get myself in a healthy relationship, I would find a way to just blow it up. I was hyper avoidant, and I still do. That's what I struggle with the most now. Is just really like an avoidant attachment style, and just trying to. Yeah, I mean, I was in some that I would attract some that just didn't make sense, but did some dating. I also just never had the stability in my life where I felt like I was worthy of like a healthy relationship. Like with coaching, it's not very stable, and the gym was kind of a struggle the whole time. Didn't provide me a lot of space for that until then I dated someone when I wasn't on it for like kind of the whole time, and then even after I left, we were together, and once that ended, I spent 2 years after that. But it was really like, I would say, if I could sum up my relationships, and especially the healthy ones in my 20s, like I was just avoidant.
Yeah. What does that mean? So just for the listeners, because I think we sometimes we use certain words, and like I might use the word avoidant, and there's kind of a meaning that I have attached to it. You might use that word avoidant, and there's a different meaning. So for you personally, like in regards to those relationships, what does avoidant mean?
In mine, it was it was, on the surface, it was me either sabotaging or avoiding, like literally avoiding relationships that I thought could be healthy.
Okay.
So that was even like avoiding confronting myself in my patterns, right? Now I did, when I was in my late 20s, get into like Sex at Dawn by Chris Ryan, that book. It's a different type of like, also, because at that point I felt very broken in relationships. Like I felt like I cheated. I didn't really want to cheat. I felt like it was out of integrity, but it was like these patterns in my life I didn't really understand. So I was it was like more of a quest of feeling like not broken. But I think avoidance is like it is that internal sense of like sabotage by running away in some sense. Which anxious attachment would be sabotage by latching on.
Okay.
Right. So it's two different manifestations for a similar process. So for me, that was. Emotionally avoid, like not wanting to share, like pushing people away.
Okay.
That was a lot for me. And then the Sex at Dawn piece, even early, when I started listening to Aubrey Marcus back in the day, it helped me feel not so broken, which gave me a little compassion for myself, which was really helpful. And just like, hey, I'm a human being, I'm a process. Like this is something that I will work with in my life, and have to really get keen to how to fix that. Not really fix it, but just work with it.
For sure.
But yeah, it was an interesting situation for sure. Like it was chaotic. Is another good word for it.
Right.
Yeah. And until but I don't think, this is pretty standard, I think, for men especially. Like if you don't have the stability in your life to create a solid foundation for a relationship, and that doesn't mean like providing for someone else or anything like that, but just so you know what the next day looks like or the next week, or have some kind of sustainability in what you're doing, it's really challenging to create a relationship for such an ungrounded place. And I was, by definition, my whole 20s were pretty ungrounded. And that definitely showed up in my relationships.
Right. So is that kind of like the one takeaway as you look back on those relationships in your 20s? Is that kind of the one takeaway, or the one thing that you really have had to focus on, is that avoidance?
Yeah, exactly. Avoidance, and I still, like I said, still work on that in my relationship now. It comes up, and I'm lucky to be with someone who I can like talk this stuff through with.
Right. Yeah.
Also, like boundaries, and I think it was what I, coming out of my 20s, I got really clear because I spent a couple of years single, like 30 to 32.
Okay.
Really just single. and which was great. I needed that. That
Absolutely.
was perfect. And it helped me get a lot of context of what I value about myself and what I love to be, what I really enjoy when someone's attracted to it in me, right? Like, what about myself do I get really excited when someone is interested in that?
Yeah,
right. And that's like a really fun way to think. Like, oh, that's cool. That's nice that I feel valued by you because you understand my values.
Wow.
Versus I'm receiving your projection of what you value. And maybe I have those things I don't value. Those aren't things about myself that I'm really stoked on. So there's an incongruence there.
Right.
So boundaries and being able to communicate these things. And then also just, a lot of it was just being unafraid to say and express who I really am at this moment. And also being open to the fact that, it's a kind of a deal breaker for me if our relationship isn't allowed to evolve as we change.
Right.
And a lot of people aren't keen to that. So it became a really a discernment game. Like what feels right. Why does that feel right? Does it feel right because it's feeding some kind of codependence, or does it feel right because it's in alignment? Which are subtly different.
Right.
And you got to do that investigation.
I like it, man. We're starting to pull back some layers. Now, you just mentioned, because dude, like that like next level conversations like that, dude, it sets my soul on fire, man. Like let's get past like the weather talk, the politics talk, the sports talk. Let's go deep, right? And so you just mentioned there was a 2-year period where you, for the most part, you said you stayed single. Was that kind of was that on the heels of you then meeting Kelly and entering into that relationship with her, or not?
Yeah, that was right. That was before. So leading up to Kelly, I was pretty single and I was dating a lot. But I was I was single, but I was like open to dating, and I was traveling a ton. So it was like I had these really, really powerful, fun connections with people for just a couple weeks, which I thought was like perfect for me at the time.
Yeah.
And I was just like feeling being intimate again and like caring for someone again, even though knowing that it was going to end. A lot of people say it's like unhealthy, but I think it was perfect.
Okay.
And we both and I started to really value whatever even sexual experiences I had with people that everyone felt respected. Like it may be casual by definition, but it's respectful. And that was really important to me. And that was a product of empathy and listening to someone else and what they wanted and how they wanted to be treated, how they wanted to be seen, and how they hadn't been seen before. And that really got me excited. I mean, even now, like that's if I could say there's one thing I miss about being single is like really that experience of like truly like seeing someone and providing like, hey, you know what? I would like to be an example, and this may be kind of arrogant, but it's like I'd like to be an example of how you deserve to be treated because you're a human being. And a lot of times in this dating game, you feel like a number or an object, and guys, and women and men alike. But it's if you can lead with respect and say like, hey, like I'm only gonna know you for a week or two, but I want you to feel super respected for those 2 weeks. I think sometimes for people, it shifts the way they perceive their own value, and that as someone who really cares about that a lot, like that was one of the most fun things about learning how to date again. So I hadn't that I had been disrespectful, but it wasn't at the forefront of my mind, and that became really, really cool.
Now, let's talk about Kelly, because you mentioned kind of California a little bit there, and then I think within the last couple months, you guys have moved out here to Denver. You mentioned the house and everything, so. Just kind of unpack and share a little bit, Connor, like what has Kelly added to your life, and then like how have you guys been able to flourish together, and maybe what is the impetus or what is that one kind of cause of why this relationship is so powerful in this season of life for the both of you?
Yeah, so we met through our podcast. So
okay,
that
cool.
was cool.
Cool,
that was
yeah,
really,
absolutely.
Cool. And it happened fast. It was a really strong connection, but it was different. It wasn't like fiery, like passionate, lustful connection. It was the depth to it that I was unfamiliar with, and I knew that even before we met in real life. We talked for about a month, a lot before we actually met in real life. So that was really, really interesting and fun. But things like, again, once things took off, and what I think that we provide for each other, we've talked about this at length, is she really grounds me out. Like she's a very grounded person, very pragmatic. Which gives me the space to kind of be me, and I do the opposite for her, right? So I'm like the one that's like, hey, like whatever that thing is that you're like ashamed about within yourself, right? Some passion, desire, whatever that is. Like I've had the luxury of being around a ton of different types of relationship structures and styles, and I love reading about sexuality and development and relationships. So for me, I'm not naive to your desires. But if you want to express them and explore them, you have the space to do that, and I'm not going to judge you for it. So for her, she's felt very judged and kind of restrained in her life, and I let her kind of open up in a way that most people haven't before. And for me, I felt very ungrounded, as we said.
Right.
So for me, she's that. So they have this cool balance.
Beautiful.
Which also provides tension. I think there's something like balance and tension are very close cousins, right? Because the same things that provide a real fun tension in a good way, which I consider balance, right? It's like this kind of like tug of war in a really fun, playful way. Also can get out of balance, and that's when you get into like arguments and fights, and it's about the same thing. It's funny because you fight about the same things that you love about each other. You know what I mean? So
interesting. Yeah.
It's a fun game. We've been able to really grow a pretty cool relationship so quickly. But it comes with I don't want to be with people like, oh, it's such hard work, because I don't think it's work like anything else.
Right.
Like it takes conversations and challenging yourself and accepting things about yourself you don't want to. But I'm not on the struggle bus with it, and I don't like to paint that picture either.
So what's the reasoning for the move out to Denver? Because you guys were in sunny Southern California, now you're in sunny Denver. So.
Yeah, she lived in Southern California her whole life.
Okay.
She had a short stint in New York. I came from Texas. I'd been kind of all over the place.
Right,
So I've just been bouncing around. I missed what I call like Texas type stuff. I miss going hunting. I miss the weather. I love the mountains. Like for context, I was in LA, or I was in California on the West Coast, living really close to the beach for a year, pretty much. And I've been in Denver for 2 months. I've been to the mountains more in 2 months than I went to the beach in a year.
Wow.
So, see what I'm saying? Like, it just aligned. There's people here that are doing cool. Like, as you know, there's people here that are doing good work.
It's unbelievable.
It's centrally located. We can pop to LA if we need to. I can go back to Austin if I need to. It's 10 hours from my hometown, which is about as close as I want to be to my hometown. So I can drive there for Christmas, which we will be doing in a few days. It was one of those things where we started visiting and it felt like home.
Cool.
And so we just made the reasons happen to get here,
Dude, I was living down in Colorado Springs the last couple of years. I just moved up here within the last month and a half, but I spent a lot of time up here because of podcasting, right? But there is Colorado as a state, as a whole is an amazing place to be. But then kind of the Boulder, Denver, this whole kind of area, it's just different, man. Yeah. Now I've heard a lot of great things about Austin in regards to health and all that, but I've told people outside of maybe Southern California, which you could speak on this because you've been to all three places, but Southern California, I usually say Austin, Texas, and then kind of Denver, Colorado, outside of those three places in regards to kind of health and fitness and just personal development, small business and all that, and kind of that younger generation, young vibe. I don't know if there's many places in our country quite like Denver in this area. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think Denver and Austin are similar.
Okay, yeah.
It just depends on what you like to do. But Denver is way less techy, which I like, right? The businesses here REI.
Right.
REI is the Apple of Denver.
Yeah, there you go.
Which is cool. It's a totally different vibe, and I like that. That excites me. But Austin's a very, as far as the people go, very similar vibe. If you just kind of substitute the tech.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Southern California, if you're a beach person, if you like the beach, North San Diego County is gorgeous, expensive,
right?
But gorgeous and so cool.
Yeah,
I would like to go back to Encinitas just by myself for a week or so.
For sure.
Because it sits. The people there are sweet. It's they got a small town vibe, but you're literally you drive into this little town that's a main street, and you're driving towards the ocean. The waves are crashing. It's just it's beautiful. Cool, it's really cool. Yeah. I'm not a huge ocean goer, but the sunsets out there are crazy. The Denver sunsets. I'm a big sunrise guy. Denver sunsets are the best.
They're good, dude.
Mountain sunsets are something else,
dude. It's awesome, man.
The West Coast has some good ones, but it's close. But Denver's worth.
It's a special place out here, and that's why I think there's so much positive energy and just positive vibes, because it's an amazing place. Now we're gonna kind of start heading towards the end here, but I do want to kind of just touch on a couple things, just kind of exploring your Instagram and exploring a little bit about kind of your coaching and who you are, Connor. One of the things I came across, kind of a statement I'm not for sure, probably on your Instagram, one of your posts, but it said authenticity over everything. Would you unpack that a little bit for us and explain why authenticity is so important and valuable in your life and for human beings?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I actually came up with authenticity is my number one value.
Okay.
When I was coaching at CrossFit Central, so I was probably 22, 23.
Okay.
That's actually when I came up with the Realness. Same weekend. It was
Really?
It was a business retreat.
Okay,
So I came up with the Realness,
cool,
and then
yeah.
we did all that thing. So that was my first website ever. Was CoachConnorMoore.com, the Realness.
Love it, man. That's good.
It was my coaching blog, but yeah. So that was what I realized is like it just hit me as like if authenticity is a primary focus for you, right? And how can any other values make sense? How does anything, if you don't have that as like a primary aspect of your intentions, right, for the day, for your life, then what else is there?
Right,
like,
right.
Do your other values even make sense? And do you even know where they're coming from? Because if you don't have that like primary keystone authenticity intention, right, and that's a process. It's not something you just get. It's a continual process, and you change and evolve, and that's a process as well. Then I think you're selling yourself short and adhering to ideas that maybe you might outgrow or change. And I think authenticity as a process, seeing it as a process, opens you up to things you can enjoy, things you might want to explore, and things you might dislike. But like it opens up the boundaries of your experience in a way that allows more in. And I think we can express ourselves more fully in that journey. And with full expression, as I believe, like the way we express ourselves out in the world really dictates a lot of what we get back.
Absolutely.
And if you can express yourself fully, I think you get a lot more back. And I think that your life experience becomes more full. But it's through that authenticity piece is really. Before when I started saying that, it was less of a buzzword.
Right. Yeah, I know. I gotcha.
But I still love that as a primary value of mine, and I think that's even why a lot of people that I won't podcast with that reach out to me, because I'm like, you just seem like you're kind of full of shit, and that's okay, but that's not what we're about. That's not
of course.
That's a discernment piece. But I think authentic self-expression is such a valuable goal that creates a positive feedback cycle in your life. And man, it's so fun. But you have to acknowledge some shitty parts about yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I want you to speak on this. That's tough for a lot of us guys, right? I mean, do you see that being now? Again, you just alluded to it. Like now, authenticity is a buzzword, and we've got all this stuff. But still, dude, you get past all the IG nonsense and all the social media crap, which I love social media. I love IG. I always say IG is my jam. But all there's a lot of fakeness mixed in with the realness, right?
Yeah.
But generally speaking, is it fair to say? Do you feel like us guys have a hard time of being really authentic and kind of allowing those skeletons that are in the closet out? And if so, how would a guy that's listening to this step into being more authentic?
Yeah. Well, I always like to throw this caveat out there. It's 2019. It's a lot easier to be authentic now
Great
than
point.
it ever has been, right?
For sure.
If we're back in, I don't know if you watched Mad Men, but like the Mad Men era, when like men were supposed to be like a certain thing, it's like we have a lot of. I mean, you can really, to a fault, probably just be whoever you want to be, right?
Right, for sure.
But I think there is amongst men a lot of times we put boundaries on ourselves, right? And even like myself in the 20s, like not feeling like I deserved a relationship because I didn't have the stability, which is pragmatic. But really emotionally challenging, right? So I think that, especially in the culture we're at now, like and I want to this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but I want to caveat with like everything has a shadow side, right? A lot of men are being like attacked, and for certain things, for like saying something wrong, right? Which doesn't really create positive dialogue,
right?
You can get canceled, right? The shadow side of social media is like cancel culture. Right, so it kind of creates a narrative of like, if you're a dude, you don't really get to speak your mind. You have to like follow these rules, and that's not necessarily a healthy place to be. That being said, everybody should be respectful.
Absolutely.
But if you can't say something wrong and get honest feedback, that's not like you're a terrible person. That's not honest feedback. That's a judgment, right? Being like, hey, that might be offensive to X, Y, and Z people. Somebody goes, most people, if they're a compassionate human being, can go, oh, damn, I didn't know that. Wow, that's an educational piece. And so I think that does throttle back self-expression in a way, which no one wants to be. Most people don't want to be offensive.
Right, yeah. Right.
It's like, wow, I learned that in my life experience, and that's really not healthy, right? Now, there's a different thing. We talk about like assault and different stuff like that, where it gets real. That's far removed from what I'm speaking about here.
Of course.
And then I think on top of that is the expectations that men carry about how they're supposed to, what it means to be a man, what masculinity actually is. Which, if you look at it through like Taoism or any kind of like spiritual development, masculinity has a lot to do with spiritual development. Like women are very grounding, and men are generally, and the masculine, I say feminine is very grounding, and the masculine is more expansive as far as that goes. And those play together in that way.
Right.
I think we've lost a lot of that. And you know, for reasons, right? World War II wasn't that long ago.
Right.
And men had to be something different then. Right? But we're playing a different game now, and I think we're stepping into it more and more. And I think conversations like this really help vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Right? And finding a masculine way to be vulnerable, because I think what's happening is that women, the expectations, right? Men for whatever reason love to take on expectations and pretend like we don't. It's the weirdest thing. But now, since women have kind of led the way in emotional expression, emotional development, what we have now is a feminine model of emotional expression. And what we're gaining through the work that you and I do, and friends like my buddy Stefanos Stefandos, he does a lot of this work. I don't know if you know him or not.
Yep, I've heard of him.
Fantastic guy. So shouts to him. But are creating a masculine form of vulnerability, where what I say is that women generally feel themselves into thinking, and men think themselves into feeling. So that's where we miss each other. But neither one is wrong or right. It's just two different ways of going about something. So being able to share and be vulnerable and express yourself, I think sexuality is a big part of this. I think if you can express yourself sexually, romantically, the way that feels genuine to you, and explore that without shame, that bleeds into the rest of your life. Because that's like a very, very personal, intimate space for you.
Of course.
And if you want to explore that for yourself, it makes the stuff that's less intimate and personal, might maybe work or in friend groups, a little bit easier. And there's also a lot of trust built in that, right? So that's a very kind of like, I don't know, kind of all over the place thoughts on that.
I like it. Now, the one thing I want your suggestion on for the guy that is trying to work through being more authentic. What's like that first step for him to be able to present to the world a more authentic version of himself, or really step into that authenticity? Would you say it's through, because from my perspective, it begins with writing. I think for me, writing is a very powerful outlet. It's a very powerful tool. I consider myself a writer, and for me, I can really get my deep inner thoughts and emotions and feelings and all that stuff that's inside. I can release it through pen, pencil, and a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Do you think writing, or is there maybe another form of another tool to kind of like step into that authenticity for us guys specifically?
So I think that the writing is huge because it helps you get your thoughts and feelings out of a piece of paper, and then you can communicate them effectively versus feeling like you're out of control of them.
Perfect.
Right? Because you can lose yourself in that, and that's not necessarily a healthy place to be.
Right.
Especially when anger is so much more acceptable for men, right? So we lean towards that as like a default avoidance in a way.
Right, of course.
So writing is great. I also think that I like to like piggyback experiences on writing. So you have your writing practice, but also going to do something that you thought you wouldn't do, right? So for the guys that I've coached, and I mostly coach women now, I consider myself a women's coach now, but when I did coach a lot of men, like say my like former frat dudes, right, who are like that type of guy. Everybody knows that type of guy. 24, 25, trying to figure out, like, I want to be more authentic. I would have them go to a yoga class that they've maybe never been before.
Yeah.
That's a totally different environment for you. Put yourself in novel environments that challenge you. Ecstatic dance classes. Go find one of those. Go find the sound healing. Like something that you would typically think, like, oh, this is super feminine, very like sissy stuff, right? Go try something out. What's the worst that could happen? But it's going to force you to communicate in a different way because those are different types of people. And you may, oh, I really like showing up to yoga class and like being really kind to someone who like believes in astrology and hearing about my Aquarius chart. You know, it's like maybe I don't believe in that stuff, but it's just like, oh wow, I'm more open to this experience, and that openness to experience, you get more possibilities for expression. But if you just live in your same, I do this, I go to this gym, I do these kind of workouts, I go to this job, I go to this grocery store, just start mixing things up a little bit, and you're like, oh wow, I really liked that. That was cool. Or maybe like, I didn't like that at all. That was really terrible. It's okay. It's all learning, and that helps you. It frees you up so much. It kind of like loosens you up a little bit.
For sure. Yeah. I'm going through that. I'm literally learning that in my life right now.
That's awesome.
Just opening up, not closing off, and just allowing things to come in, man. It's powerful, impactful stuff. Now we're gonna wrap things up here. I want to finish with this question. If there was one message, Connor, that you could share for the rest of your life with the world, that's intimate relationships, personal relationships, that's, business-wise, people that you're coaching, that's with just like, hey, your social media, all platforms that you have, available to yourself till the day that your time is up here on this earth. So one message, what would you share for the rest of your life?
Oh, man. I can't say this wouldn't change.
Right.
You asked me next week. But right now, I think that something that takes the pressure off and helps us take ourselves less seriously is understanding that there's no such thing as a fixed person. A fixed person does not exist. And there is so much freedom in acknowledging yourself as a process, right? Even removing the word "I need to fix myself" out of your vocabulary, right? That's not something you need to say. It doesn't. It's not a thing. To be fixed, this table is pretty much fixed that we're sitting here at, right? It will be this table until it's not this table anymore. Right. That's not the way that life works. Whether you're a bison or a squirrel or a human being, all a process.
Absolutely.
And opening yourself up to as much input and context on this life as you can get is only gonna give you more options to express yourself. And that, I think, is so liberating and takes the pressure off, and you take yourself so seriously, because that compassion for yourself lives in the laughter and the smiles, into just kind of smiling at the nonsense that life presents. And if you can say, hey, this is all part of a process that I am, as challenging as it may be, it frees you up so much. And I think that pressure taking off just opens you up to so many more possibilities.
Love it, man. Love it. So definitely a very thorough conversation. and that's what I appreciate about, the podcast medium and just connecting with new human beings, right? Before we kind of go in regards to the kind of the outro, if somebody wants to find out more about you, somebody wants to find out about your coaching, if somebody wants to just like, hey man, like you mentioned this about the addiction that your parents were struggle with, and that really hit home for me. If somebody just wants to find out more about you, reach out to you, things like that, where can people find out where Connor's at? Yeah,
man. So if you want to reach out and just like share something that you're going through, Instagram is a great place for that. So that's Connor Wanders, Connor with an E, Wanders with an A. I put out a podcast every week, except for during December. I take a little break.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
But that's at the Realness podcast, anywhere you can find podcasts.
Perfect.
And then for coaching or retreats, got a retreat coming up in March 2020. We're going down to Soltara for 3 ayahuasca ceremonies over the course of 6 days. So that's a really fun experience. You can find all that stuff at gettherealness.com.
Perfect. So Connor, I just want to thank you for your realness, for your authenticity, and I just want to thank you for being super transparent, sharing your story, and just sharing some of the knowledge that you have gained over your years. And I'm super excited that you're here in Denver, and I'm definitely looking forward to just staying in contact with you, connecting with you, because it's always fun and exciting to kind of like share the commonality of somebody that has a podcast. And obviously I enjoy podcasting. So thank you for hanging out, and thank you for just the opportunity to connect today.
Hey man, I appreciate it. It's been really fun.
For sure. All right, so listeners, I just want to again thank you for hanging out with Connor and myself today on the 127 Fit podcast. Your listening ears are always greatly appreciated. If you would like to find out more about myself or the guests that I'm bringing on to the podcast, you can find all of that on Instagram at 127 Fit. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. LinkedIn is Quentin Vars. And if you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review, and also subscribe to the podcast, that would be cool. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest for the 127 Fit podcast, you can send me an email or give this email out. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. If you guys are looking for a personal trainer or just to kind of get your fitness goals kind of set going into 2020, you can also send me an email, 127fit@gmail.com. We'll set up a free fitness phone consultation, and I would love to train you. I would love to help you in regards to health and fitness as we are looking at 2020 just very shortly, right around the corner. As you guys, again, are finding value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit podcast, another favor I'd ask of you is to take that episode or episodes and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.